Welcome. In this tutorial, we'll go step by step to install Ignition inside a Podman container on a DEIF iE50 PLC, and configure it so it automatically starts whenever the PLC powers on. We'll begin by finding the PLC on the network, connect it via SSH, prepare Podman for pulling the Ignition image, run the container, and finally enable the Ignition service for system startup. Let's begin. Our first step is to identify the PLC hostname. This will allow us to connect without worrying about the IP address. For this, we'll use Apple's Bonjour tool, available for Windows from Apple's support page. Download and install it first. Make sure your PC is on the same network as the PLC. Then open a command prompt window and type. This command lists all devices broadcasting an HTTP service. Look for your DEIF device in the results. You'll see its instance name, which you can use as the host name. For example, you might see something like iE650-076D19. That's the name you'll use to reach the PLC. Now, open a browser and test it by visiting http://yourplchostname/config. Accept the connection, then log in with username admin and password admin. Here you can check the PLC's firmware and BSP version. This confirms you've reached the correct device. Next, we'll connect to the PLC's terminal using SSH. Windows 10 and later usually include the Open SSH client by default. You can confirm it's installed by typing /v. If it's missing, go to App Settings, search for Optional Features. Click View Features, and add Open SSH Client from the list. Once ready, connect by typing /root at your PLC hostname. The first time, it will ask you to trust the key. Type yes. Then enter the default password, which is root. Now you're inside the PLC terminal. To check Podman is installed, type Podman -- version. You should see the version number displayed. When pulling container images with Podman, you may see an error related to the security policy. This happens because of recent cybersecurity changes. To solve this, we need to create a new editable policy file and link it in the system. Let's do it step by step. First, go to the containers directory by typing cd//etc/containers. Here, after typing ls, you will find the default file called policy.json. This file is protected by default, so instead of editing it directly, we'll create a new one in a writable location. First, remove the old file with policy.json. Move into the var/lib/containers folder and create a new file. Then type touchpolicy.json. Now we will create a symbolic link so that Podman uses this new file instead of the default one. Type lane --sf, and you can autocomplete the folder locations by pressing the tab key. Finally, let's edit the file by typing vpolicy.json. In the editor, press I to insert, then paste the configuration. You can find this payload in the official documentation site. When finished, press Escape, then type :WQ to save and quit. Now the policy file is ready. Podman will accept images when pulling from registries. Remember, this setup is fine for testing, but for production you should use stricter rules. Let's make sure the PLC can reach the internet. Run a quick ping by typing ping-c4google.com. If you see replies, you're good to go. Now pull the Ignition image. Type Podman pull Inductive Automation /Ignition: latest. For testing, we'll use latest. In production, always use a fixed version, for example 8.1.48. Now, we run the container. Here's the Podman run command. This starts ignition with the name ignition-gateway inside a container called Podman-container and maps the host port 8088. Check that it's running by typing Podman PS. If it shows as up, try reaching it in your browser. You should now see the ignition welcome page. Right now, our ignition container will only run until we stop it, or until the PLC is powered off. To make sure ignition always starts automatically with the system, we'll create a custom service. First, create a directory to hold our custom service files by typing mkdir-p/app custom services. Next, we'll create the ignition service file inside this folder. Open it with v/app custom services ignition service. Inside the editor, press I for insert mode, and paste the service configuration found in the documentation. When you're done, press escape, then type :WQ to save and exit. Now, let's enable the service. Remember to use the full path when enabling. Type systemctl enable/app custom services ignition service. Each time you add or change services, reload the system daemon by typing systemctl daemon-reload. And now start the service with systemctl start ignition service. If everything went well, you can check the service status with systemctl status ignition service. From this point on, whenever the PLC reboots, the ignition gateway will automatically start in the background. To recap, we discovered the PLC's hostname, connected with SSH, prepared Podman, pulled and ran ignition, and finally set it up as a service. You now have a persistent ignition gateway that comes up with the system. Thanks for following along.